Imagine moving into your dream home, only to have your nosy neighbor, a self-entitled woman named Karen, decide your property is her shortcut. One morning, you wake to the sound of chainsaws ripping through your fence, all because she claims she needs access to the back lots. But this isn't just about boundaries, it's laced with something darker, a simmering prejudice that turns a simple dispute into a battle for dignity. As tensions escalate, the injustice unfolds in ways you never expected, leading to a clever twist of fate that flips the script entirely. What happens when the oppressed strikes back in the most unexpected way? In the quiet suburbs of a Midwestern town, where manicured lawns stretch like green carpets under the summer sun, Jamal Thompson, a hard-working black engineer in his mid-30s, finally achieved what many dream of: homeownership. After years of saving, he purchased a modest two-story house on Elm Street, a neighborhood known for its picket fences and tight-knit community, predominantly white and affluent. Jamal, raised in a bustling urban area, saw this as a fresh start, a place to build roots away from the city's chaos. He envisioned barbecues in the backyard, perhaps starting a family one day. Next door lived Karen Whitaker, a retired school teacher in her 50s whose pristine garden was the envy of the block. Karen embodied the archetype of suburban entitlement, always meddling in neighborhood affairs with a forced smile that masked her judgments. From the moment Jamal moved in, her demeanor shifted. Subtle at first, stares from her window as he unloaded boxes, whispers to other neighbors about changes in the area. Jamal brushed it off, focusing on settling in. He installed a sturdy wooden fence along the shared property line, not just for privacy, but to define his space in this new world. The trouble began innocently enough. Karen approached Jamal's yard one afternoon, eyeing the fence with disdain. She insisted on historical access through his land to reach a communal trail behind the properties, a path she claimed her family had used for decades. Jamal politely checked the deeds. No such easement existed. But Karen's persistence grew, her requests turning into demands, underpinned by an unspoken resentment toward Jamal's presence in her neighborhood. Whispers of racial bias floated in the air, unspoken but palpable, as if his very existence challenged the status quo. As weeks turned into months, Karen's fixation on the fence intensified, morphing from neighborly nuisance into outright harassment. Jamal noticed small signs at first. Trash mysteriously appearing near his driveway, anonymous notes in his mailbox hinting at fitting in better. He ignored them, attributing it to adjustment pains in a new community. But Karen's actions escalated. She began hosting loud gatherings on her porch, where laughter mingled with pointed glances toward his home. Jamal overheard fragments, words like outsider and property values, that stung like hidden barbs, revealing the racial undercurrents fueling her behavior. One evening, returning from work, Jamal found survey stakes planted haphazardly along his fence line, as if someone had attempted to redraw boundaries. He confronted the situation indirectly by hiring a surveyor, who confirmed the fence stood firmly on his property. Yet Karen persisted, filing petty complaints with the local homeowners association about obstructions and eyesores. The association, dominated by longtime residents like her, dragged their feet, their responses laced with bureaucratic delays that felt deliberately obstructive. Jamal sensed the isolation. Neighbors who once waved now averted their eyes, caught in the web of unspoken alliances. The tension peaked during a stormy weekend. Jamal awoke to the roar of machinery outside. Peering through the rain-streaked window, he saw Karen directing a hired crew, their chainsaws tearing into his fence with reckless abandon. Splinters flew as panels crashed to the ground, exposing his backyard like a wound. She stood there, umbrella in hand, her face a mask of triumph, claiming urgent access to repair a supposed drainage issue on her side. But Jamal knew better. This was no emergency. It was a calculated violation, rooted in her discomfort with a black man owning land she deemed hers by entitlement. Devastated, Jamal documented the damage. Photographs of the mangled wood, timestamps on videos capturing the destruction. He filed a police report, but the officers, familiar with Karen's family in town, dismissed it as a civil matter, their indifference a silent echo of systemic bias. Legal fees mounted as Jamal sought an injunction, dipping into savings meant for home improvements. Sleepless nights followed, his mind racing with the injustice. How a simple fence became a symbol of deeper divides, where race amplified every conflict. Karen's smug demeanor only fueled his resolve, her actions exposing the fragility of equality in spaces meant to be safe. Whispers spread through the neighborhood, some sympathizing with Jamal in private but staying silent publicly. He felt the weight of being the other, his achievements overshadowed by prejudice. Yet amid the rising storm, Jamal researched property laws obsessively, uncovering a vulnerability in Karen's own holdings, a forgotten tax lien on a sliver of her land, the very strip bordering his. As her aggression continued, with anonymous calls to his workplace hinting at troublemakers, Jamal's anger transformed into quiet strategy, the emotional stakes building toward an inevitable breaking point. The confrontation reached its boiling point on a crisp autumn morning when Jamal discovered the full extent of Karen's sabotage. Not content with the fence's destruction, she had escalated by dumping debris onto his property overnight, broken branches and old garden waste piled high against his garage. This blatant act of vandalism, captured on his newly installed security cameras, provided irrefutable evidence. Heart-pounding with a mix of rage and determination, Jamal marched to the county courthouse, armed with documents and a steely resolve forged from months of endured injustice. There, in the sterile halls of bureaucracy, he learned of an upcoming public auction. Karen, it turned out, had neglected property taxes on a narrow easement strip along her land's edge, the very access path she coveted. Overextended from her own lavish renovations and perhaps blinded by her entitlement, she faced foreclosure on that parcel. Jamal's research paid off. This wasn't just land, it was leverage. As the auction day arrived, tension gripped the air like a vice. The room buzzed with local bidders, but Jamal sat poised, his bid calculated to outmaneuver any competition. When the gavel fell, signaling the start, bids flew fast. Karen herself appeared, her face paling as she recognized Jamal in the crowd. Her frantic attempts to counter were futile. Her financial woes left her outmatched. In a surge of adrenaline, Jamal placed the winning bid, securing the property line for a fraction of its value. The room fell silent as the transfer was announced, Karen's expression crumbling from shock to defeat. This wasn't mere revenge. It was a reclamation of power, turning her weaponized privilege against her. The racial undertones that had poisoned their interactions now lay exposed, the system's flaws ironically aiding the underdog. Jamal walked out with the deed in hand, the weight of injustice lifting as the scales tipped in his favor for the first time. With the property line now under his ownership, Jamal wasted no time in fortifying his boundaries. He rebuilt the fence stronger than before, incorporating the newly acquired strip to expand his yard slightly, a symbolic expansion of his hard-won space. Karen's once dominant presence faded. Rumors swirled of her financial struggles deepening, forcing her to downsize and eventually move away from the neighborhood she had long controlled. Jamal's victory rippled through the community, sparking quiet conversations about fairness and hidden biases that had allowed such harassment to fester unchecked. In the aftermath, Jamal reflected on the ordeal's toll. The emotional scars from racial microaggressions disguised as neighborly disputes, the financial strain of legal battles, and the isolation of fighting alone. Yet it also ignited a spark of empowerment. He volunteered with local advocacy groups, sharing his story to educate others on property rights and systemic racism in suburban America. The house on Elm Street transformed from a battleground into a sanctuary, where Jamal hosted inclusive gatherings that bridged divides, slowly shifting the neighborhood's dynamics. Karen, the entitled white American who had wielded her privilege like a weapon, became a cautionary tale, her actions a stark reminder of how unchecked prejudice erodes communities. Jamal, the resilient black victim turned victor, embodied the quiet strength required to dismantle such barriers. This story, inspired by real events of racial injustice in housing disputes, underscores a profound truth. Entitlement rooted in bias often sows the seeds of its own downfall. What if standing firm against injustice not only restores your peace, but inspires change in others? In a world where racial divides persist, stories like Jamal's remind us that resilience and clever strategy can turn the tide. Have you faced similar battles? Share below. Your voice matters in the fight for equity.